fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. My guest today is Kathleen Harwood from In the Moment Child and Family Therapy. Our topic today is going to be why punishment doesn't work. And I get it, you're going, what? But hang in there, we have some good information for you today. Kathleen, thank you again for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure.
This is ongoing in parenting. Ever since I've been working with families and children, there has been this back and forth about what punishment looks like, consequences, natural consequences. And we're getting more research. And what's great about parenting today, that we have a lot of scientific research that backs up what we're going to be talking about today. And clarifying that we're not saying that there aren't results for behaviors. That is not at all what we're saying. But what punishment typically looks like and why that doesn't work.
Sure.
So I think a good way to start is we've been defining a lot of what we've been talking about in these episodes. So what is the definition of punishment that doesn't work?
Well, I'm going to use a quote from an author. His name is Nost. And he says, punishment is punishing a child for having a problem.
I like that.
So punishment is what we think is what we should do. So we don't know any other way. It's because in our own parenting, the way we were raised and the way society works, we use something that I call the judge, blame, and punish cycle. We do this and we think this is how it works. So we see our children, we're judging their behaviors, we're blaming their behaviors, and we're punishing their behaviors. And often what that means is we are ignoring our children until they act up. So we are sort of, if they're behaving, if they're quiet, life is good, we're on autopilot. Hey, good, let sleeping dogs lie. But when we see something go on with our children, we jump on it. I got to do that. Why? Because if I don't punish my child, they're not going to know that's wrong. And they're either going to end up living in a cardboard box or at the state penitentiary. There is very little in between here. So we don't know what to do. We want our kids to be okay. So we do what we know and we punish. And there are better ways.
And that, as you said, there are better ways. I know for me, when I started learning these better ways, and it was out of necessity, I became a foster parent. So a lot of the ways that I was raising and punishing my son, now I've had a hard stop.
Sure.
Because I'm learning these other ways and things that, I was the spanking generation.
You bet. Me
you
too.
have a foster child, corporal punishment is not part of it. So I was forced to learn new ways and was, I have to say, surprised that, there are healthier ways to correct behavior. And again, I want to put that out to parents. Today, you're going to be learning healthy ways to correct behavior where you're not going to be damaging your child's identity. Right. And I tell parents this a lot too, when you see an undesirable behavior, a very small percentage of it is actual defiance, that there is a problem. And I have to say, I wasn't initially buying into this when I learned it years and years ago.
Yes.
But as I started practicing that approach, I've learned, oh my goodness, in their little minds, there is a problem. And if I take a moment, we can figure that out.
Yes.
So let's get back more into breaking down. We have this judgment, we have this blame, and then we have, then we punish. Can you walk us through an example of what that looks like if you can put a specific in there, like a behavior?
Sure. So let's say you have a child who is generally pretty well behaved. and you have some rules around behavior in your home, and one of your children decides he's very frustrated or she's very frustrated and, hits their brother or sister upside the head with a truck, right?
Which is typical sibling behavior.
Could be. And so what do? We see it and we jump in, and instead of going, what just happened here? We immediately say, well, you can't do that, and you know our rule, and now you're on a timeout, or now you've lost whatever, and I'm going to put some sort of a payment on that behavior. Instead of going deeper and understanding that your child, who is normally a pretty well-behaved kiddo, or even if they're not a pretty well-behaved kiddo, I think you hit it on the head. Most children want to be lovable. They want to know that they're lovable, they're acceptable, they're worthy. If we're seeing extreme behaviors, they're symptoms, they're not the problem. So to be able to say, wow, what's going on here, will be much more effective. The power that you have as a parent, and I want to quickly jump in and please let the parents in the audience know, this is not a guilt trip. We've all done it.
Yes.
This is what we know. We parent the way we know how to. And there's been so many different methods, and parenting is not about behavior control. Parenting is about the relationship.
Absolutely.
And in the relationship, you have far more power to influence thoughts and beliefs. What we think and believe affects how we feel, and how we feel affects what we do. If you can see that chain of interaction, you can begin to modify what you do instead of the judge, blame, and punish cycle.
Absolutely. And when we talk about that, to remember, even when you have this knowledge and you're understanding and you're trying to find a better way to do things, there are times in the heat of the moment,
we lose
it.
We lose it. We're
you
human.
lose it, and and you go back, to it. So by no means will, once you learn a different way, are you going to be perfect. It may not slide, back into this.
Yeah, but we're not looking for perfection.
Yes, and and just taking, I find too, you talked about often we see that undesirable behavior, we jump in right away as a parent, and I also say taking a pause is so helpful. Time is your friend.
Absolutely.
When you're a parent.
If it's a good idea now, it's a good idea 10 minutes from now.
And that's something that I had to learn, that like if I don't resolve this right now, again, right, your mind goes, we're looking at prison down the line.
You bet.
But I can take a pause to figure it out. So that first piece that you talked about is when you see the behavior that's a symptom of a problem, finding more, information, is taking that pause there.
What's going on?
What is going on? So once you've learned that, what's going on, how do you proceed?
Well, let me make another definition, because I think this will be a nice way of describing what we do next. If punishment is punishing a child for having a problem, what's the opposite of punishment? It's discipline. Well, we say discipline, we think of punishment. But the real definition of discipline is to teach. So we want to teach, and we want to understand that underneath behaviors are emotions. And that's a dirty word. I don't want to deal with my kids' stuff, but that's what's happening. So we have to figure out what's going on. When I see an angry child, I'll go back to our example of child hitting the other child. When I hear anger as a counselor, but also as a parenting coach and as a human being, I've been trained to think, what's so scary? Anger is a secondary emotion. What's under anger is almost always fear. What's so scary? Well, to the child, it might mean that I'm not getting the same attention. It might mean that you've had that truck for the last 2 hours and I've been waiting for my turn, and I'm afraid I'm not going to get my turn. To a grown-up, that seems ludicrous. That's a big deal. You know, we think that if our 5-year-old, their only problem is they have to face kindergarten every day, but you know, I got to go to work and I got to pay bills. Their kindergarten problems are just as big as yours because that's their developmental level and that's where they're at. So if we're going to teach, we have to tune in. We have to know where our kids are at, where their brains are at. They're not little adults. Their brains are developing and growing, and they may not even have the ability yet to understand that other people have different thoughts than theirs. So we have to know where they're at.
So I can sense it because I had been in this spot, and I'm sure parents listening are still spitting on there needs to be a punishment, result, consequence for undesirable behaviors.
Yes.
This is a really hard thing because that's how they're going to learn.
Gotta stop that.
Okay, so I am going to teach them by
bet.
giving a punishment or whatever. Walk us through now. Okay.
Now what do we do?
Yeah, we got the problem. We understand that. Okay, I wasn't getting my turn. Okay,
Right.
And we still want to make sure that our child understands hitting is not okay.
Correct. Correct.
So what does it look like?
Okay, so your power is in the relationship. So let's say you've done some due diligence and now you know. My fear was I wasn't going to get my turn. So now I can attune to that. I understand. That makes perfect sense to me. You were really worried. And I'm just going to say what I hear. You were really worried about that. That really bothered you and you didn't know how to handle it. So you handled it kind of poorly. So it's okay to have these feelings. Being afraid is normal and it's human and it's okay. What is not okay is how you're handling it. So I need to help you to handle it. Now, there are natural consequences, and I'm really a big believer in them. If I don't pay my electric bill, they turn off my electricity. If I'm caught speeding and I get a ticket, I'm going to pay that. Those are natural consequences, and this is the real world. Your job as a parent is to help prepare your child for the real world, and you get to do it in a much gentler way. Hopefully in your family, I'm a big proponent of something around family meetings. And in family meetings, we get to let our children begin to become problem solvers. Hey, we're having a hard time with you two fighting. What do you say? How do you guys think we could solve this? And let them start to brainstorm some answers. And as you do that, you begin to develop some family rules. And your children now have a hand in that. So they're almost setting up their own natural consequences. Our rule is we don't yell at each other, or we don't hit each other. Or maybe we reframe that in use inside voices, or we're always being kind. What happens when we're not kind? What are we going to do about that? I'm not a big fan of timeouts. I'll throw that out there, and now I've got all kinds of parents upset with me because it's what they've been taught. It's 1 minute for every year that the child is of age. Well, I'm 60, that's a nap. I like timeouts for me. But for a 4-year-old, what 4-year-old is equipped to sit there for 4 minutes and go, what did I do? And what would I do differently? They're not going to do that. It's a waste of time. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's not doing what you want to do. You need to speak into your children's life. So I'm a much bigger fan of 2 other skills. The do-over. So you've got the 2 children there. Okay, we have a problem here, but we also have a teachable moment here. Let's reenact this. Let's play act. Kids are great at that. They just did it. Let's do it again, only this time let's do it the right way. Let's do it with kindness. Let's do this with compassion. The one sibling could say, you know, I've had this truck for a long time. I think it's your turn. And the other child can learn how to advocate with words, you know, hey, it really is my turn. And we can play act and we can teach. Let's do this over. Wouldn't you love to have a do-over for the times you've screwed up in your life?
Yes.
And then we learn that mistakes are not horrible. They are teachers. We can allow our children to make mistakes.
And that goes into that resilience piece
You bet.
that we talked in the earlier episodes.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say, just because this is where I was at, took me a long time. I still know parents are out there. He hit a kid.
Yeah.
How do we resolve that? What's the restitution piece there? So,
There might be a restitution piece.
so what does that look like? And again, like talking through how we can do it better next time. Getting help. I'm a big, it's like, well, you handled it yourself instead of coming to get me, to help you.
Yep.
But, I always look for restitution against the person that was wrong. So how do you do that? Because I know some parents are like going,
So
okay,
there's
yep,
a
I get
justice
that.
piece here. There's a justice piece here.
So it's like, I get that. I get okay, that makes sense to reenact it, but we still have a child
who has been wounded.
who has been wounded, and we have a child who needs to know that that's not okay. And again,
Absolutely.
it always kind of leads to, it needs to be punished.
Does it? No, it doesn't.
But can there
I
be
think,
restitution steps?
I'm going to suggest something else. Instead of restitution, first of all, we also want to attune to this wounded child. We want to be sure they're okay. We want them to understand that, that was not okay. We're not sanctioning this in any way, shape, or form. We don't, this is not okay. And what happened to you was not okay. And we want to make sure that was clearly understood. But what I would be far more interested in than restitution is empathy. I want to build empathy. I want the child who was hugging the toy to understand that while they didn't deserve to get hit, do you have some empathy towards your sibling who's been really waiting a long time? And for the child who's been really waiting a long time and kind of snapped, some empathy towards, wow, it's not nice to get hit. I don't like that either. Can we build empathy? I'm a strong believer that punishment is not how we do parenting, but rather we get to grow the behaviors that we do want. And in an earlier episode, we talked about it's kind of like being on a diet. When you're on a diet, we always focus in on, I have to avoid the cheeseburgers and the chocolate cake. But really, it's not about what you get rid of, it's what you add. It's the fresh fruits and vegetables or the lean proteins, or how, and when you're full of that, you don't have room for that other junk so much. And it's a natural thing. This is the same in parenting. If I can build empathy and I can grow the behaviors that I actually want. Okay, now there's a new piece. How do I do that? How do I grow those behaviors if I'm not squashing the ones I don't like? How do I do that? That's a trick. Whoever taught us to do that?
Yeah.
We didn't learn that. We weren't told that. So there are two basic principles that I think grow the behaviors we want. The first one is the attunement piece we talked about. We have to tune in. We have to know what big feelings our kiddos are having, and we have to help them to cope and learn how to deal with feelings. The other piece is heartfelt appreciation. Heartfelt appreciation. How do we grow behaviors? Heartfelt appreciation. Heartfelt appreciation is what motivates us. So I want you to put yourself in a place where someone has criticized you, especially say a spouse or a workplace or whatever. Your boss comes to you and says, you did a lousy job here, and I want you to fix it right now. And makes you feel horrible. How do you feel at that moment? Like the last thing you want to do is make this person happy.
Yep.
You want to sort of retaliate, and you're angry. You're not motivated except through fear. I might lose my job, or he's going to come back and yell at me again, or she's going to come back and yell at me again. It's not motivating.
Yes.
Same for our kids. When we yell at them, when we punish them, that doesn't motivate. But what about when your child is kind? What about when your child does share? What about those times when you notice that your child was just like this, but holds back? Now, I really want to clock you, but I didn't. What if we say, you know what, I noticed that. So the wording around this is a little stiff. It's I feel, because. When you share the toy with your brother or sister, I feel so proud of you because I can see what a lovely person you're becoming. I'm so proud. What you're telling your child is you notice the good behaviors. It affects you personally. I feel this because. And all children do something well. And sometimes it starts very, very small, especially for children with super reactive behaviors. They might only do a few things really well, but you can use those. You know, hey, wow, I noticed you hung your toothbrush up. When you hang up your toothbrush, I feel really, I don't know, what would be the word for hanging up your toothbrush? I feel really relieved because I can see that you're beginning to accept responsibility for what you do. Wow, that feels amazing. And I want to do more of that.
Yeah, and there's research coming out about that now. This is, something I've coached parents on. We get so focused on that end result that we don't focus on the stuff along the way or how they got there. And again, maybe you have an incident where you can see they want to hit, but they yell, and it's like, I saw that you want to hit and you didn't do that. We do need to practice, the voice, but thank you for not hitting.
Yeah, and it's more than just thank you or hey, good job. This piece, you're infusing yourself, the power of the relationship into this. So we're all really good at, hey, good job, buddy. It's more than that. It's you're doing this thing, and you have the power to impact other people in positive ways, and that feels amazing. Really it's tremendous motivation. But a word of caution, do not, I can't even emphasize this, don't do this for negative behaviors. When you hit your brother, I feel so disappointed in you.
Yes.
Because if it's a super powerful positive piece, imagine the damage that you could do.
Well, it's the difference between that focusing, on the behavior, and then that's an I did, that's something that can change and be done better, to where now you're looking at the I am. I can't believe you did that. Okay, now they start internalizing.
Absolutely.
This is who I am.
Who do your children? Our children get their sense of self from us.
Yes.
So one of the things I remember in one of my I do a lot of parenting groups and workshops, and I remember I was working with this one couple in the group, and the mom said, the one thing I worry about with my husband, he's a great dad, but he teases. And sometimes it's hurtful teasing. And he thinks there's no problem with that because he thinks this is kind of how he's connecting. And he said, well, really? Is that such a bad thing? And I said, let me put it to you this way. Never say anything to your daughter that you would not like to hear come out of her husband 10 years from now. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because what we put into our children now is how they're going to do life later. It's their sense of self and their sense of self-worth. So if they can understand that, yeah, I'm a human and I goof up and sometimes I make mistakes and sometimes I even do what we might think of bad things, that doesn't make me a bad person. It means I made a mistake and I can learn from it, I can grow from it, and I can do better. And I need my parents' help to do that. And they can't do that if they're punishing me, because when they punish me, I want to retaliate, or I'm doing it out of fear. It's only a temporary fix.
And another piece too, and I don't know if you've used this in your practice, but with the kids that I've worked with, when you're building that empathy piece, and they're kind of owning it, understanding how the other person feels, I have them ask, I said, well, ask them how you can make it better. And I have found, instead of feeding that to them, a couple of things. Sometimes I'm like, well, that's a little over the top. We can kind of back that down a little bit. But then they own it too.
Yes.
Or they ask, like, how can I make this better? And then you see that collaborative, between them. That, again, we want to teach kids that they are in control of their behavior, and they're also in control of how to recover from their mistakes. And again, we keep going back to this resilience piece.
Absolutely.
Whereas if we just step in and we do a punishment, there's no understanding, there's no talking about it, there's no teaching your kids how to make it better, how to recover from a mistake.
Absolutely, unless they're allowed to make them.
Yeah, there's a big piece. And I would say, for me, what I had to learn is this does take time and intention.
Absolutely.
And
it does feel a little labor intensive in the beginning.
Yes.
I will own that, but not forever.
Yes.
And now you've got a system that really works, and it gives everybody kind of a voice in your family.
The kids start doing it themselves.
Oh, and they make the rules. They own the rules.
Yeah, they own it. And then I've seen with families that I work with, and it takes some time. And I kind of started keeping some records, and I was like, it's kind of about 4 months, when you implement for this to start to
Takes
take.
time.
But it was this cute to see them just flowing and doing it themselves. Like,
Sure.
they still need help managing that talking out piece,
they
right?
will.
They
They
just don't
will.
have the skills yet. The emotions are in
Right.
there, but then they know that part that's coming next of, how can I, make this
Sure.
better? Then you see the other kiddo going, yeah, I should have shared sooner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this one family I had, they had a little 2-year-old, and she knew it. I would just have to say,
You bet.
you need to come down.
Earlier
And
the better.
yeah, to come down. How can I make it better? And her brothers were suckers, so they would just be like, all I need is a hug.
Sure.
But again, it's now they are starting to own their behavior. They are starting to own that I can make things better, and just,
Which builds into the whole self-efficacy piece.
Yes.
I can make a difference. One piece that I don't want to let slip by us is the importance of modeling behaviors. So
Absolutely.
if we are saying to our children, no yelling at each other, you can't be yelling. You can't go, hey, we don't yell here. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
No.
And so I'm a big believer in giving myself a do-over.
Yes.
Giving myself a break. You know what? Hey, a break is one of the best things, because all we want to do is insert a chance to gain control. Breaks, I ask everybody in the family to pick a break spot.
Yep.
The break begins when you are in the break spot and calm, and it lasts for all of 30 seconds. You have control over when it starts and when it stops. It's not hours, it's not minutes, it's not a punishment, it's a coping mechanism. I need to take a break. I need to calm down. I need to do a little breathing. And so I want my kids to see me take a break. And I'm going to actually verbally say, you know what? I need a break. And let them see me doing that. Let them see me own my mistakes so that they know they can own theirs. The antidote to this is the empathy, but also the defensiveness is when we learn how to own our stuff and we're loved anyway.
Yeah. Man, we could dig in. This time went by so
always
fast.
does.
But, I think it's just another way of thinking, and to give parents the grace of it's going to take some time.
Absolutely. And you're not going to do it well right out of the gate, and that's okay.
And it does work. I mean,
it really does.
Over punishment, you're just developing better character in their kids. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
I really don't want to end this segment. May have you back to talk
Absolutely,
more on this
would love
piece.
to. Anytime.
But thank you so much for tuning in today. And remember, a time invested in a child is never wasted.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.